If I could begin by going back to one of the points I made myself earlier, it was a tough landscape for SMEs in the back half of 2015. Have things changed? Have things improved this year? Is the business environment better, or is it just a case that people are coping better with it? Farah, perhaps you, as the representative of an SME here, you'd like to start with that.
In general, I think 2015 was positive. Business has picked up significantly for us in general. I think SMEs are looking for more support to flourish from the banking sector. A lot of the things that they're looking for is support from the banks in terms of credit facilities, letters of credit, having more support for lower interest rates. I think that is definitely something that is required for all SMEs. Robin, I can't agree with you more when you mentioned that lack of cash flow really is what's hurting SMEs. I think that having a steady cash flow is important, and I think that the banking sector really needs to support all SMEs, even at the startup stage, and giving them facilities such as overdraft, etc. So I'm not sure what is planned in offering SMEs more facilities in that regard.
Well, I will actually begin with the SME, in fact, on the front side of it. And it's very interesting to see that 2015 actually has gone very well until the fourth quarter, when actually everybody is just shaken up and understand that the market is very tough. Things are not going the way we actually expect to do it. While that's a past for us, but we never actually stopped lending from the perspective where basically customers actually struggle. That's one reason when actually customers are from the cash flow perspective, they were struggling. And you rightly said so, how can we just help them? 2016 started January, Feb, and now we're almost at the end of the first quarter. I can tell you one thing is the worst is basically from my perspective, was started in the beginning of the year of 2015. And it is now behind, and we have now actually looking towards the supporting SME as much as we can do it, and we have been doing it, we never stopped it. Our CEO has been very vocal about it, and we are still lending. However, the lending is being very cautious. We are not lending on the statement-based lending, which used to be business loans and etc. Now it's pure on the balance sheet-based lending, where we can actually look at the cash flows. We can look at it. Then the second thing is the credit bureau. So the bureau comes in. Banks are more comfortable on lending. They can view the whole history of your credit. That's basically it's a good thing to have it. It has also the flip side of it, because the customers who are already with you on the renewals or the continuation of on the facilities are also a very terrible situation. But by looking at all out, I'll sum up with this one. Banks, from our perspective, we have never stopped. Mashreq has always been on the forefront on the lending side of it, although we've been cautious. If we were lending about 2.5 million or 3 million of a size of a company or lending I'm talking about, we've been million and a half or 2 million dirhams. We've been cautious about few industries. There were industry challenges, all those. But I tell you, the first quarter was a challenge for us as well. By looking at it, every company is not exactly the same what we used to look at it, let's say the quarter 2015. So from the perspective of lending, we're very much there. We are trying to support as much as. On the other side of it, I wanted to just highlight on the restructuring part of it. The people who are here, it is stuck. There are tough times for them. We have been proactively restructuring those facilities, and we have been trying to just support them so as much they can stay. These are the times. However, we see that from third quarter onward, second quarter, of course, it continues. Third quarter onward, I think most of the banks are going to come back and start lending.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. We represent the private credit part of Gulf Capital. So we're not actually a bank and we're not doing shorter term money. When we look at investing in the M of the SME companies, we look at three things. The first and most important thing that we look at is the quality of the management team. Are we willing to partner long term with this management team, and can we invest in this management team? The second thing that we look for is the business model sustainable, regardless of the cycle? Is it sustainable? And the third, and I think one of the things that my colleague touched on, is the cash flows. We're a cash flow lender. We're not lending against the value of a particular asset and what happens with that. Because we're a private credit lender, we are seeing more companies coming to us for either they can't get financing from banks for one reason or another, or two, people who wanted to sell their businesses or wanted to sell a stake in their business so they can grow and take some cash off the table to invest in their business. We're seeing a lot more of those opportunities coming through. I would say for us, 2016, given sort of the space that we're in, is going to be much better than 2015, particularly because of the perceived lack of liquidity that's available in the banking market.
You talk about the perceived lack of liquidity there. I have to say that having spoken to, in the last 2.5 months, having spoken to 4 bank CEOs in some length, having spoken to heads of corporate banking, heads of business banking in 5 other different banks, the one thing that everybody has said to me and everybody has been at pains to underline is what you've been saying: we are still lending. Yes, obviously, more care is being taken. Things, to a certain extent, have changed because of the implementation of Al Ittihad Credit Bureau. That's not a bad thing. And Farah, you mentioned the issue of getting cheaper money, having lower interest rates. In theory, at least, if not in practice, that will flow through, because as business credit positions become more transparent, the risk factor that banks face in lending to a business or giving money to a business in any shape or form becomes lower, because they're more likely to get it back at the end of the day. Because this is the big thing about borrowing money: it's actually not my money if I borrow it, it's somebody else's, and they will want it back. But if the person who is doing the lending is more sure of getting the money back, they will charge less of a risk premium for lending it out in the first place. That's the theory, surely.
Yeah. I just wanted to add up to this. What actually went wrong, from my experience, is that we've been lending. However, have we been lending sensibly? The problem here in the market is that we've been lending to the entity based on their trend, the statement of accounts, which is not actually exactly the one bank should look at it, and that actually is a problematic. Then the second thing is that there is a over leveraging in the market. People are basically keep on lending. Everybody would want to have the facilities or the loan and all everything, and it's available. Everybody want to have a SME share. So, but not knowing about it as an overall. So Credit Bureau came, I think, about 6 months ago. I would say a little more than that. So when Credit Bureau came and it started consolidating it, people started realizing what exactly is going wrong. There's a fundamental issue on the lending. And you see the 2 major issues we have found in all the lending which is troubled. One, they are highly leveraged. There are about number of banks are more, 7 or 8 or 10 or 9 at times. Second thing is that what a very surprising thing is that the people who have left the countries are the one who are here for a longer period, and they would not, they wasn't actually able to sustain this tough times, because this is not only about oil, which has gone down. It's capital with the currency is very strong. You just see the currency become very strong. CS and African countries, they're not coming up here. Second thing is that the credit is tightened up. Even in the market, suppliers, they have tightened their credits. So it's couple up everything together for an SME. It's become a phenomena. Banks is pulled out. I am unable to generate much of a cash. People have just hold on to it. Oil is going down. Government payments also has been what is basically has been held up. So that drilled down to all, and people are in trouble on this one. This is what I feel, that from now onward, people are just looking at the right collateralized based lending, which is based on the financials. What Abdulaziz was talking, and I am actually looking at it. Look at the financials, have the quality customers on board, and it's ample. I mean, I am telling you, we have been doing businesses. First quarter has gone very well for us on the lending side of it, and we continue to do it, and we're going to do it. And the second thing is that we are also supporting from them from the innovation perspective. We're having the new technologies are being supported. We are trying to just support customers as much as we can do it on the trade, on the transaction banking. These are the things which is everybody's looking at it.
Well, actually, sorry, in terms of what everyone's looking for, I see a lot of focus primarily on lending. And you say all support in terms of lending, but I'm curious to know what are the plans in offering SMEs other facilities. You mentioned that a lot of people left the country and there was huge amounts, yes, which everyone is aware of. However, I think that if other facilities were available to them, they wouldn't have gotten to that point. I mean, just lending is not just the answer. There's other facilities that should be provided to them as well. Additionally, I think we also need to look at numbers. SMEs are so important in the UAE. Looking at the number of companies, there's over 300,000 SME companies in the UAE. Additionally, there are over 90% of the workforce in the UAE as well. Unfortunately, only 3.8% of all lending is comprised for SMEs. So I think that number needs to be so much higher because SMEs are so important in terms of innovation for the country. SMEs are the backbone of innovation. The UAE economy is now going towards innovation-led. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid said our plan for 2021 is changing the country, changing the country's direction rather into being innovation-led. So I think that supporting SMEs is so important. Instead of just saying that we're going to support them, we really need to look at exactly what we're going to do. I loved all the articles that I read about Mashreq Bank and your CEO. I respect it very much. I'm looking forward to seeing what are the new plans actually that are going to be given to SMEs, or the new facilities that are going to be provided. At the same time, I'm very excited to see what else can be provided to SMEs, not just lending, and also what kind of preferred interest rates can be offered to SMEs. In the long run, I think high interest rates and lending is not the answer to any problems that SMEs are facing.
There are other services that can be offered which are not yet being implemented here, or are being implemented very quietly, and a lot of people don't know about them. I'm thinking, we were talking about this earlier on, factoring, for example.
Okay, now okay, let me just first actually let me just tell you that there are different type of an SME. We need to understand about it. One is an M, one is an S. Of course, there are some micro relationships. They start up 4-5 million dirhams of a turnover company. So what happens is basically everyone has a different needs. From the perspective, it's not about lending. It's about a partnership you have with the customers. And that partnership is not on the lending side. I totally agree with you, and I'm not actually denying the fact. Because what we talk about is lending. But the thing is this, is we basically the customers actually needs you. When you lend them, they try and just have everything is. And whereas I always tell them, and I was talking to one of the gentlemen here in the forum, I was telling him, I said, look, lending is not the only relationship with us. I can actually do anything with you on the trade side of it. I don't need a lending for this one. You need an LC, and I can discount. You can have anything with me. I don't need anything on your FX needs, your trade needs, or your investments needs for a discussion sake. Your transaction banking, how can we just forget about it? SME needs a lot of transactions through the banks. So what we're trying to do to give them some online solutions, trying to support them. I can tell you one thing, perhaps our lending relationship will be lesser than what we have at more than the transaction banking. So it's not about only lending. On the second, on the price, look, everything has a price, and the thing is that when you just gradually move from one segment to the another and to third one, I just say, if you are between 5 million dirhams of a turnover company, of course the risk is high for the banks. And of course the pricings are high. Gradually you move into the next ladder, you become a bigger entity. Price actually become better on this one. However, by looking at it, the market, competition is too high. Price, I think, is not a challenge, to be honest, because everybody is coming and fighting for the piece to have it. But in this challenge right now, which is going on, is basically not a price. It's about a right customer size from a customer perspective, where banks are looking at it. It's not about price. It's not.
I think one thing I'm going to do right now, actually, is plug something that we're going to be doing later this year. We will be running a series of seminars and workshops which we hope will be able to be useful to institutions such as yourselves to come along to and understand more about the kind of services that you've just been talking about and how they operate and how you can take advantage of them and how they can benefit your business.